Today, we'll be taking a look at Just Cause 3 on the Potato Masher. In case you don't know what it is, the Potato Masher is a $375 PC custom built in 2014 and given a RAM upgrade last month, and is designed to compete against the PS4 for the rest of its life cycle. The goal of this project is not to make fun of consoles or imply that they're inferior, but to show that PC gaming can be just as good or better for the money. If you like the project, head over to Patreon and throw me a couple dollars to help test more games. The Potato Masher was started by the Casual Shenanigans Gaming podcast, so click the link on screen to check us out. If you've never seen a Potato Masher video, links to the specs and important videos are in the description. Okay, I've waited long enough to do this review, let's get to it. I wanted to test Just Cause 3 2 months ago, but I decided to wait. The PC version had severe stuttering and slowdown. Here, you can see some early recorded footage. At medium settings, the CPU usage is almost maxed and the game is struggling to run. It also crashed about every 10 minutes on both the Potato Masher and my personal gaming PC. The PS4 version suffered from severe framerate slowdown and some of the longest loading screens I've ever seen. I wanted to give both versions of the game a chance to get patched and improved for a month or so before I tried to compare them, and I'm glad I did. While neither version runs amazingly well, they are far better than they were at launch. The PS4 runs at 1080p and 30 FPS, so that was my starting point for the Potato Masher. Aside from the stuttering, which I'll get to in a minute, the Potato Masher had no issues running the game at high settings. It was almost stable at very high, but it wasn't close enough to keep the settings there. Remarkably, the PS4 version looks almost identical to the Potato Masher, and that's pretty rare. I think there might be slightly more bloom lighting and explosive debris on the Potato Masher, but it's so close that after staring at the footage for a while, I can't be sure it's an intentional design choice and not random. Both versions have good textures and object modeling. The world lighting is a little bland for a modern game, but the explosions are simultaneously absurd and hilariously perfect. The PS4 does experience noticeable slowdown during large explosions, but I think the problem is compounded by the terrible motion blur. Both versions have an annoying and aggressive motion blur that is extremely noticeable during large explosions. When the PS4's frame rate dips into the low 20s, the motion blur makes it look that much worse. Combined with the PS4's load times, I'd be tempted to hand the Potato Masher the win if it wasn't for all the stuttering. The stuttering is so bad. Sometimes. Other times, the game runs fine for 20 to 30 minutes with no problems in sight. I honestly can't figure out why this happens, but it's better than it was at launch. On my personal computer, the stuttering is all but completely gone, so there's a chance that the particular hardware configuration in the Potato Masher is especially susceptible to the problem. Curious if one of the game's settings could be the case, I dropped to 800 by 600 resolution and the lowest graphics options. Nope, it still stutters. Further confusing the problem, here we're back to high settings for a large explosion that runs smooth as silk. Well, 30 FPS silk. Speaking of 30 FPS... Just Cause 3 is a game that lets you leap out of cars and deploy a wingsuit as you glide down a mountain to set off thousands of pounds of explosives in a military post. Obviously, 60 FPS or higher would be ideal. Unfortunately, the Potato Masher couldn't keep up. If the stuttering was fixed, I think 60 FPS and 1080p would be possible at low settings. As it is, the frame rate fluctuated between 35 and 60 FPS with too much variation to feel smooth. To get a relatively smooth 60 FPS, I had to drop to 720p in medium settings. I don't like dropping the resolution, but if I really wanted 60 FPS, that's what I'd have to do. The game still looks pretty good, but it's not as good as 1080p. Remember how the game stuttered at 800 by 600 in the lowest settings? Well, here's a fairly smooth explosion at 1440p, medium settings, and 30 FPS. Is this confusing yet? 60 FPS at 1440p obviously won't work, but 30 FPS was fine. The game still looks good at medium settings and I'd have no problem playing it like this. At 4K, however, the frame rate stayed in the teens most of the time, even at very low settings. I wouldn't say 4K is realistic for Just Cause 3, at least on the Potato Masher. The game stuttered less than at 1080p though, so nothing makes sense anymore. Usually, if a game is broken or a poor experience, it's easy to recommend the other platform if you want to play it. In this case, I'm not sure I'd recommend either. The PS4 didn't appear to suffer from any stuttering, but the frame rate dragged frequently and the load times made me forget what mission I was playing on more than one occasion. I really wish I was joking. The Potato Masher ran the game well for the most part, but the infrequent stuttering marred the experience. Honestly, Just Cause 2 is almost as good as Just Cause 3 and it will run much better. If you're set on Just Cause 3, I'd buy it from Steam so you can get a refund if it doesn't work on your machine. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking or sharing it and contributing to the Patreon. Check out the description for important links and stay tuned for the next video. I'm currently working on testing Rainbow Six Siege and Rise of the Tomb Raider, but if you'd like to suggest another game for me to test, leave me a comment and I'll try to add it to the list. Thank you so much for watching and supporting me, and have a great day.